Good morning. It is our last class of the season. Anyway, we're heading into summer and we need to strengthen our backs, look after our backs for all the gardening we're going to be doing. So let's do that. Let's have a bit of a back and hip class as a bit requested from Kate. Bring my chair out of the way here. I'm not sure what we'll need for props. Get the usual, couple of blankets. You know what I want to do? Let's try something. I did this with the other class. Let's go a block at the end. So a couple blankets, a block, a strap, probably good things to have. And then I've got a blanket like this, and I've folded it like an accordion. So this way, then this way. So it's 3 high. It appears to be about the same height as the block. So maybe the block needs to turn. I'm going to go this way with the block. So then when you come down, this is going to be a softer version of what we did yesterday and a little bit lower. So I want my shoulder blades to be on the block. So the upper part is supported. And then find out where my head's going to be. Then I can lift my head up, and I'm sort of dragging my skin this way upward. You can see that? So then when I lower down, I'm still dragging upward. I'm going to rest the edge of my skull on the edge of the block. And then arms can go out to the sides if you have the space and the mobility in your shoulders. You can have them here. I'm looking still for the shoulders to be not rounding forward away from the ground, level or rolling back. So if you've got the space and are able to take them out to the side, straight out, go ahead and do that. We've got lots of space in the studio today. And then for now, bend your legs, have your feet on the ground. We'll take a few moments to connect with breath, to open up through the front of the chest, through the front of the spine. As we said earlier already, everything's connected. So let's get the breath, the lungs and the diaphragm working well, and see how that might feed into what's going on in the hips and the back and the pelvic floor. I know I've talked about pelvic floor so much. The things, based depending on how the summer goes with my family, I may do some workshops, and one would be on pelvic floor and breath, and one might be on feet, one might be on Ayurveda, all the things I love. And workshop, it would be a glorified class. It would be maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours at most. So as you're settling into this shape, notice what you feel. Notice if there's any pain. Notice if there's something that's uncomfortable, but it's not quite pain. And notice how you're breathing, whether this is a place where breath can be full. So you can start with your natural breath, and at any time, I'll invite you to, when you feel ready, to begin to go deeper and longer. So deeper on the inhales, longer on the exhales. Take some time to unhinge your jaw, soften your face. Can you be in a place to receive of spaciousness? There's levels of being open and receptive to things. We all have our conditioned responses and our beliefs that we have built over many, many years of living. And we may say, yeah, I'm open to receive. I'm open to that. But then the beliefs and the protective behavior kick in. So what does it feel like to go, yeah, I am spacious. I am open to receive. I'm going to override that belief that I have about something. but what's right and wrong, and be present with whatever is coming to me without judging it. That's a big part. Without judging and with compassion. That's a lot of a statement first thing. The beginning of the practice. But this is why, I think yoga is so much more than just the poses. How do we relate to what we're doing in the physical body? We're in this very vulnerable shape. So what does vulnerability feel like to you? Physically and mentally, emotionally? Because vulnerability is a level of openness that often goes beyond your cultivated responses in life and beliefs. Let's see what it feels like to take the breath deeper, deeper and longer, deeper on inhales, longer on the exhales. And if it's possible to make a connection to your pelvic floor, I'll lead the witness a little bit here. When you inhale, not only will you feel lifting and expansion in your chest, perhaps, you might feel your belly expanding, and you might feel your pelvic floor. I'm going to say it's a release downward, outward. It's a softening and a relaxing of the pelvic floor on inhale, even though it might feel like it should be the opposite. It could just be that's your conditioned response. So then the opposite of that is when you exhale, chest kind of comes back to where it started, belly drops in, especially if you extend your exhale a little bit longer, you'll start to feel core muscles engaging, belly engaged, and you may just feel a little bit of a contraction and a lift up into your body of the pelvic floor. The pelvic floor runs from the pubic bones at the front, pubic symphysis, to your tailbone, and from sit bone to sit bone. Like these 3 levels of hammocks that are meant to move. And if the pelvic floor is not moving, I'm giving away my whole workshop. If the pelvic floor is not working, functioning well, those muscles in the pelvic floor, then the muscles around the outside of the hips are also going to be affected, as well as the low back. So this is a really great shape to be in, to connect with pelvic floor and say, is it breathing? Is it softening on inhale? Is it contracting ever so slightly on exhale? You may or may not feel it. That's why we lie still for a little while, and I'm going to stop talking for a moment. If you need to come out, you can come out anytime. Let's just be in silence for a few moments. Take the breath a little bit more than what you're doing now, if possible. Kind of test the limits to see what happens when you go even deeper with the inhale and even longer with the exhale, knowing that you can always stop it at any time. Notice the response in the nervous system, the response in the body. I'm reminded of an episode of Seinfeld where Kramer is taking out a car, test driving a car with somebody from the dealership, and they're starting to run out of gas. And then they decide together they're going to see how far past E they can go. How far past E can you go in your tank of air? And on your exhale, knowing that you can stop anytime or change at any time, come out of the pose. Just another few moments here. If you're not feeling anything in the pelvic floor, try to make it happen. See what relaxing and letting go and releasing feels like on the inhale. And by contrast to a contraction, a subtle contraction, I'm not going to say a Kegel, but a subtle contraction, imagining tailbone, pubic bone coming towards each other, sit bones coming towards each other as you exhale. And then as you inhale, they move away from each other. Let's do 3 more breaths. And let your breath return to a natural pace if it hasn't already. Notice how breath is when you're not affecting it, when you're not changing it. And then you're going to take your time, pick a side, any side, and start to roll over, but go real slow, because it's a shape that's sort of not what we do often. I've got my head still on the block, but you can bring your head down on your arm if you want. Get over onto your side and take a few breaths there. And then from your side, you can come. We'll go on to our hands and knees. It's a really great place too. So when you're vertical like this, there's a downward gravitational force through every joint in the spine. So when we take a position that's more horizontal, like what we just did, plus table pose, and you can use a blanket like this if you wish. You don't have to. If you need it for your shins, your knees. And so be here, set your hands up so that you're not going to hurt your wrists. So lots of options, turning in, turning out, just finding just the right place. How much, without pressing the center of your palm down, how much can you connect your hand to the floor so that you're being active with your hands, not just not passively resting your hands there. And then, so the horizontal spine also gives you an opportunity to not have that downward force and to again connect with breathing through the whole body, including the pelvic floor. Often a way for pregnant ladies to move and connect better. So allow your arms and legs to be strong and allow your spine to do a sinking. Let your head hang, let your spine sink into your body. And just notice what that feels like. And then push into your hands, feel your shins, press into your shins, and then lift up away from the floor. So we'll do that a few times, a sinking and a lifting. Maybe 2 more times. And feel the movement through your spine, where it's moving more, where it's sinking more, where it's lifting more. Probably won't be in the same place. I'm going to make a suggestion that I think your upper back will lift more and your lower back will sink more. And then come back between the two, somewhere where you feel is a little bit more neutral. And have some awareness of where your pelvis is in space. And in particular, your tailbone. Your tailbone sits at the bottom right here, and it curls inward, slightly inward. So I'd like you to curl your tailbone inward even more. So think of this movement happening from your tailbone. So you curl your tailbone in, and then curl your tailbone out. We're going to stay here in the pelvis for a few moments. So as you curl your tailbone under, the low back gets lengthened. As you curl your tailbone up, the low back gets shortened. So ideally, we want to do this movement without a lot of movement in the rest of the spine. I'll get you off your hands in a second. I just want to mix it up a little bit here. We have a little bit more range of motion potentially here than when we're laying on our backs doing this. Really great way to massage the low back, lengthening and strengthening the muscles in a subtle way. Let's do 3 more. When the tailbone drops down and tucks under and curls inward, abdominals engaged. You see that? Okay, last one. So then come down onto your forearms. We're going to do interlaced fingers. I feel like I can't see with my hair in my face. We're going to do interlaced fingers. Forearms are about as wide as your shoulders, give or take. And then take one leg and stretch it back, tucking your toes under. We'll give a little bit of a calf stretch here. And then we'll change sides. You know what's coming, right? If we do one leg, then the other leg, at some point, we're going to do both legs. So that means it's going to be a lot more weight through your shoulders and arms, but it doesn't have to be all in your shoulders and arms. So keep your left leg or the other leg back behind you and work your other leg out so that you're on both your feet. And then find a balance between your forearms and your feet. Check to see pelvis drops down, see how far it goes down, pelvis lifts up, and then find somewhere between those extremes. Forearms, you can press down and push them forward, and you can press your heels back. So now core is engaging. Really, really helpful for anything low back related. And if your low back is doing all the work, you'll feel it. So feel what's happening in your abdomen all the way around the whole body, your torso. For another 2 breaths if you can manage it. And then bring your knees down. We'll take the blanket out from underneath us and we'll come lay down. Lay down with your forehead on your hands. I think we did this last time. Something like this. Just get to know the feeling of having your belly compressed here and your back more open to the room. Bend at your knees, and we'll do a little bit of rotation through the spine. So let your legs go from side to side. So legs make the pelvis move, and the pelvis makes the spine move. Of course, muscles are doing the work, but the bones don't lie. The bones get to the end range, and then they make something else move. And then come back into the center and bring your legs down. Take your hands from underneath your forehead and bring one hand underneath one shoulder. So look where your shoulder is. It's going to be slightly above, in front of the shoulder. And then the other hand in front of the shoulder. Then you can bring your forehead down so your nose gets tucked in. The back of the neck is long. And then straighten out your legs so that they are parallel as you can imagine them to be. And then press into your feet until your knees are not heavy on the floor. So your legs become active all the way up to your bum. Then press into your hands and start to pull your hands back, as if you wanted to slide them, but don't actually let them move. Pull back until you start to feel your shoulders move. And then roll your shoulders back. Lift your head. Keep your neck nice and long. So we're activating through the shoulder girdle here. We're not lifting the chest yet. Just the upper, I was going to say upper chest, head and neck. And a couple breaths here. Feel what happens. Pulling your hands back. And then keep pulling. See if you can get a little bit more of your chest off the floor. It's not going to be very high. This is a kind of a low cobra here. Notice now how your abdominals are now participating. Take 3 more breaths. And then come back down. Completely relax. Bring your hands forward again underneath your head. Keep your legs doing what they're doing. Actually, no, I'm going to do something else. Forehead down. Bring your hands under the front of your hips. So on either side of the pelvis at the front, 2 points right here in the front, bumpy points, they're the ASIS. So one hand like this, the palm of the hand is going to go on one, and the palm of the hand is going to go on the other. So that's what you're going to look like underneath. Palm of the hand here, palm of the hand here. So you can find those 2 points at the front of the pelvis. So then, let them be heavy into your hands. Let them feel heavy. Then lift your right leg and see what happens when you lift your right leg. And then bring it down, lift your left leg, see what happens. What are you experiencing when you lift your right leg? What do you feel in your hand? Pressure. So it gets heavier, pushes down. And then same on the left. Okay, so now in order to activate your core here, when you lift your leg, don't let the hip bone get heavier. And that's you turning your core on. So instead of just letting it passively sink, you're now controlling, trying not to let it get heavy. And lifting your hip off your hand is not an option. That would be a workaround. Okay, so it makes sense? So this action, we're going to do a few of them. This action is engaging gluteus muscles, hamstrings, gluteus muscles, and back muscles. So depending on how high you lift your leg, We want to involve the back muscles to strengthen them, but not at the expense of the spine being compressed. So alternate, go slow so you can be aware of when that hip point drops in and feel what's happening in your back. And if you can, differentiate between pain and a muscles fatiguing, because it could feel like it's pain if you're not used to using the muscles. So does it feel like muscular sensation? Remember, you're trying to keep light in the palms of your hands. Really great, subtle little practice for strengthening the low back without compromise. The other thing for the last few that we're going to do here is not only lift up, but reach out like you're trying to touch the wall behind you with your big toe. Are you feeling fatigue in your back? I am. I'm feeling from hamstrings through my glute muscles and my buttocks and into my low back. But I also feel an engagement through the front, the cylinder of the core muscles. I can feel that engaging because I'm trying not to be heavy on my hand. Okay, one more each side. Reach your leg. Lift and reach. And then we rest. You can bring your hands back forward. If you feel like it felt really great in your low back for the massage to bend your knees and sway them from side to side, you can do that. Okay. Then bring your hands back beside your chest. We'll slowly push in, lift off the ground, which is going to strengthen your. That'd be a great practice too if you find that challenging. Great to build your arm strength. And then come back to the table pose. You can have the blanket under your knees if that's helpful. And we'll drop the tailbone again. Oh, doesn't that feel nice? And lift the tailbone. Same as we did before. Subtly moving through the pelvis. Your pelvis is the connector between your legs and your body. So it's so important. So now, as your tailbone drops, think of it curling underneath you, allow more movement to come in just a little bit higher than where you are. So not your upper back yet. Upper back is still pretty steady. It might have moved a little bit. Just go a little bit higher into the mid back. And then reverse that, tailbone, go into the mid back. The movement from the tailbone. Because if we're not careful, the upper back, the curve is called kyphotic, and it's rounding outward. And if we're not careful, that just gets accentuated always from the way we sit and move around in life. And so a lot of the back below it doesn't get to move. And so now this is what we're trying to do, is say stay still in the thoracic spine and see if we can get movement below that. One more time. I'm going to finish with a little wagging of the tail. So imagine you have a tail and wag your tail from side to side. So imagine this is coming, this movement, not imagine, get the movement to come from your pelvis, acting on your spine. You'll have a little bit of reciprocal movement in the upper body, but mostly let it be your pelvis moving. Not the big, like cat wrapping itself around your leg. Just a little wag of the tail. Okay, then back into the center. If you feel you have this available to move back into some version of a child's pose, you can. Now I want to say too, child's pose doesn't mean you have to sit back on your heels. So this is a version that I often like to take because it gets me to open up where I don't get to open up in my low back. But you can also come all the way back here, depending on what you're feeling in your ankles, your knees, and your hips and spine. Wherever you happen to be, take some breaths here. Start to see if you can adjust your body ever so slightly to affect the parts that you need to affect. So the shape combined with the subtle movement, maybe combined with breath, can do wonders for what's going on in the body. I'm starting to think that maybe we don't necessarily need diagnoses for everything that's going on in the body. We need to spend time becoming aware of the imbalances and work on those. Oh, isn't that interesting? Okay, so now let's flip over. We're gonna go lay on our backs. Come back to having, yeah, we'll just do a blanket in half and have a strap nearby. You're gonna lay down on your back. And this blanket here is gonna come under your pelvis. So pelvis is gonna be slightly elevated. We won't go as high as a block. And then we don't need the loop, so I'm just going to slide the loop towards the end. Or you can have a tie or whatever it is that you have around you. And we'll put the strap somewhere on the foot, knowing that wherever it happens to be, do you still have the ability to move your foot? It doesn't have to be here and pull down, because that's really going to be felt in your calf. So maybe it's the center, maybe it's your heel. I personally like the heel. I find people don't follow me to the heel very often. And I'm going to move the leg like this. The other leg is bent, foot on the floor. So you're playing with the range of motion of the knee joint, opening and closing. Now, it's an opening and closing. It's not a straightening, unless it is. That's not the goal, to straighten the leg. It's to open and close. And I'm going to add layers of understanding to this. So as you're doing this, notice what's happening with your thigh. Is it moving towards you and away from you? And can you choose a spot for your thigh to be and not let it move forward or back and move from your knee? And since I have my strap across my heel, I'm going to relax my foot a little bit. I kind of want to do this, but I'm going to let it do this. So from this to this, just let it relax a little bit. So now my hands, I've got my hands circled into my strap and I've got my elbows down on the ground. Now I'm going to push a little bit. I'm going to add this action of pushing my heel into the strap as I lower and lift as I open and close my knee. And we'll do one more. And then go to where you feel resistance in the back of your thigh, hamstrings, and hold it there. Pull down on the strap. So if your strap is at the ball of your foot, as you pull down, you're also going to push up with your foot. Strap pulls down, foot pushes up. I'm going to take away some of the tension in the calf muscles so that we can work a little bit higher. So hamstrings will affect, tight hamstrings will affect the back, will pull the pelvis downward, which will affect what's going on in the back. So the little bit of a lift we have with the blanket here is inviting the spine to keep a curve in the lumbar. Pelvis is on the blanket, lumbar curves off of it. So we'll hold here, take a few breaths. You have an option to take your other leg and stretch it out. Now, if you're stretching it out, it's an active leg. It's like you're standing on it. The sole of your foot is facing the wall in front of you, as if you're standing on the wall. And try to push your feet away from each other. Notice if anything has changed in your pelvis, whether it's lopsided, heavier on the left than the right, lifted up higher on the left or the right. Bring it back into balance for the last few breaths here in this pose. This is a pose called Supta Padangusthasana. And it's probably the one that's given the most in the Iyengar yoga world for anything back related. And we stay and we breathe. It's that open to receive part again. If you're holding on and it's so intense, there's not going to be a lot of breath ending up moving through the tension. So where do you need to be to soften to receive? Yeah, the breath comes in through the nose and goes in the lungs and all that, but it does get exchanged into the bloodstream. And it's the prana, the life energy that comes in with the air you breathe that is circulating through. And that's what we want to affect. We'll stay here for another few moments. Bottom leg is active, top leg is somewhat active, but it's not intense. Be where there is a feeling of circulation. You can always come back to, how's my pelvic floor doing here? Am I breathing into my pelvic floor? Is it releasing on inhale? Is it contracting on exhale? The leg in the air can be totally bent, can also be further away from you. Can also rest it on a chair, the back of a chair. Give your body, your breath, your nervous system a chance to release and receive. Okay, let your strap slip off your foot and then slowly lower your leg down. Take your time. Another incredible opportunity to lengthen and strengthen your hip flexor muscles. So the slower you go, the more you're strengthening in an elongated position. And when the psoas is long and strong and healthy, your back will be too, because the psoas, the big hip flexor, attaches to the bottom vertebra of the lumbar spine. The last 4. Then when you land, keep your legs parallel and active just for a few moments. And just ever so slightly before we leave this, take your tailbone and curl it forward, ever so slightly. This is not a whole tuck of the pelvis. This is just a little curl inward. And see how that affects your low back and your pelvic floor. And your breath. Okay, then release. Let your legs fall away from each other. Take a few breaths. Then slowly bend both legs. If you feel you need to have a little release in your low back, bring your legs towards you. That's like the reverse child's pose, upside down. You can have your hands underneath your knees. I kind of like bringing my legs forward and then rocking along the edge of the blanket in my low back. Or you can hold it very still too if you want. Okay, then bring your legs down, feet on the floor again. We start all over on the other side. For me, it's the right side. You might have done a different side. I'm going to go to my heel, hands wrap up into the strap, and we move the knee joint. At first, we move it and let it go wherever it needs to. And after a while, you can go, is it possible to keep my thigh in one position and only move from my knee down to my foot? Relaxing the foot as you go. We do these things, we repeat them. Repetition is the mother of skill, number 1, but also the more you do something, the more your nervous system can be retrained. Oh, I can do that. Okay, good timing. How you feeling, Kate?
It's really helpful for my left hip scream.
Okay, good. It's more subtle.
It's the subtle and more sophisticated way of getting it.
Yeah. Than the bang over the head that you've been getting. Yeah, I find that subtle ends up with bigger results than the gross. So basically, less is more. So start to pull down on the strap, push up with your foot, wherever it happens to be. So give a little bit of resistance. Again, it's not the most intense activity. If it's starting to really feel intense, then how much can you back off and still feel like you're working without struggling, without, oh, I couldn't sustain this, I'm working too hard. And then we'll move into a place of holding. So whether it's a bent leg or a straight leg out here or a straight leg up here or a bent leg up here, doesn't really matter where it is. Wherever you feel the resistance in the back of the leg, that's where you're holding. Without trying to get further, So we're not pulling to get into a deeper place. You're meeting yourself where you're at, where the resistance is, and staying there.
We're trying to pull the leg like into the hip joint.
Yeah, you're just going to use gravity. So I've got my hands wrapped into the strap and letting my arms hang off my foot. So I'm not actually pulling down. I'm just letting gravity do it. Is that an answer for you?
But is the hip joint supposed to be, I'm not asking it, the thigh bone setting itself into the hip
Yes.
joint?
Thigh bone is sitting into the hip socket. Yep. Which is a cause, sometimes a correlation to back pain is when pelvis is shifted forward and thigh bones are shifted a little bit more forward. So we're rooting it back down into the socket where it belongs. And we're talking subtle. There's not a lot of room for that to happen, but it's enough to have a cause, be a cause and effect for your low back. So it's the rooting that is the thing that we're really getting the benefit from. Hamstrings, yes, but the rooting, even more. You have an option to take your other leg out straight if you want. It's active. See what changes in the pelvis and the shape of your low back. I want to try to be a little bit more connected to a neutral shape of the spine. So the pelvis is elevated, yes, but the curve of the lumbar rests against the edge of the blanket. And then the rest of the spine gets to do its curves too. Your lumbar and your neck curve are the same curve. And when one is not great, the other one won't be great either because they balance each other. So if there's pain in one, maybe look to the other. So I'm hanging off my leg. You can go higher if you want. And you can tune in with breath, pelvic floor. See what it feels like to take a few deeper breaths. And this is holding in a place that's not intense. It's different than, well, maybe it's similar to yin yoga. Let's say, we're not trying to get anywhere. We're not trying to push to get somewhere. We're being here wherever we're feeling sensation. We're saying, can we breathe here? Can we be here? Be present with whatever comes. And it could be thoughts, it could be emotions, could be physical sensations. And we all have stuck energy in our bodies, stored energy that served us at one time for survival and probably doesn't anymore, but it's still there. It still sits there. Can you be open to receive? Some space between the bottom foot, the top foot. And that can be done in a subtle way too. Okay, if you feel like it's long enough, take the strap off the foot that's in the air and take your time slowly lowering your leg down. Might be the more challenging part of this experience in this pose. If you can, allow yourself to have that challenge. See what makes it challenging. And this is where you figure out what's strengthening. Now, is your back doing all the work? Can you use your core to help keep your back more stable and unchanging its shape as you lower your leg? And then once you've landed, stay in that shape for a moment with legs active. Supta Tadasana, lying down, mountain pose. And then let your legs roll away from each other. Take a break. We're going to move right into Shavasana. So you can take the blanket that's underneath you and push it down so that it goes behind your knees. If you want it to, you can even fold it over again. If you have skilled feet, you can bring your other blanket in. It's over there under your head, or you can just have very little support if you want. If you'd rather be on your side or your belly, you can do that too. And check in with breath. Check in with how your back feels, your pelvis, pelvic floor, outer hips, abdomen. Begin to allow your body to move as it wishes. Breathe how it wishes. And for you to continue to feel, sense, notice And be present with whatever is within you. I truly believe we have the power to heal ourselves. And it takes practice and awareness to do that. Give yourself a blessing. Bless your body for working so hard on your behalf. All the systems of the body to function as they do. We're very fortunate we don't have to think about all that. And thank your heart for its spaciousness today. Baby steps opening to receive. Thanks for a great session. Have a wonderful summer. Peace.